So just to introduce you, I think we've all talked. Graham, isn't it?
Yes.
Did you talk to Dan?
Yes.
Okay, so everyone's met, so that's good. We're the team.
I'm Sharon Brown. I'm the
sorry,
team
Sharon.
leader of governance and community leadership.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Good.
All in Richard's team.
So we're all the team that take care of the grants.
Plus one other, but we're allowed her to go home.
Yeah. I'll probably be your first point of contact if you've got any questions, and I'll be able to refer any of the more tricky ones on to Diane or Sharon. And as the process of the round goes forward, we'll support you as much as we can. As I mentioned, we'll go through the presentation, go through a bit of a questions and answers session. And if you have to leave any time through that, feel free to. We're happy to hang around as long as you've got questions and specific situations and ideas to talk about. Within reason. We probably won't stay till midnight, but it's all good. I've put a bit of documentation on the table there, and you can see in the packs, take a pack home, it's got the slides we're going to cover today, it's got the information booklet for the Identified Needs Grant. It's got my contact details there as well, and the pen there has got the volunteering logo and number on it. And I'll just mention about their team. They also sit within our team with a couple of volunteer officers supporting the recruitment process and induction and all those things in council for volunteers. If you've got organisations you're associated with that are interested in volunteering programs, they're always happy to share some advice, talk about the training that they undertake and those sort of things. So feel free to give them a call. I've also got some brochures and cards down the back for them as well. So, Wyndham Identified Needs. Just go through a bit of an overview of this presentation. I'm going to look broadly at the grants programs from Wyndham. We've got a number of different programs that I'll talk about here. There's a couple of other subsidies and scholarships and things that we're involved in. More information on our website, and please refer to the website for more details. That is at wyndham.vic.gov.au/grants. There's quite a bit of info on there. So there's a specific purpose that we'll go through for identified needs. We generally call that ING. There's the eligibility criteria. We'll talk about that in detail. A competitive assessment process is undertaken. There's a panel that will look at each application and go through all that fairly standard process. And the final approval is by an ordinary council meeting, and that's around May timeframe. We'll go through the application form, some tips for writing the application, and where to get help with questions. This gives you a bit of an idea of the portfolio of grant programs available from Wyndham City. The ones I'll probably draw your attention to is these responsive grants. They are continually running on a monthly basis, and they are available to groups who are looking to either incorporate as an association, and then they can apply for those incorporation costs after the fact, or those incorporated associations if they want to run projects that are increasing community inclusion of disadvantaged groups, and a number of different criteria around those projects. If they're meeting those community development objectives, they're also eligible to apply for up to $1,000. There's also another section of the responsive grants, which is for individuals, young individuals under 25, going to an event of high standing, usually in a sporting context, and they might be going to an international or a national event. They can apply for up to $500 for those travel costs. And that goes on a monthly basis, so it's pretty fast turnaround for those types of grants. Community grants, we've just had a round close. We haven't published dates yet. Haven't confirmed dates for that to open again, so we're probably limited on the information for that one. Responsive grants are continually going, and identified needs is the one we're hearing about today. So the purpose of identified needs. Really, it's looking at those agencies, not-for-profit agencies, that can either expand their operations or set up operations in Wyndham. So we're looking at projects or programs that meet an identified local need, clearly. In terms of framing up that application, in terms of supporting the need and the approach to meeting that need, there's, I guess, a lot of creativity open for community organisations to present a case for how that should happen and how their organisation would approach it. We're looking to have an alignment with the overarching strategies of council, clearly, and they are the Community Health, Wellbeing and Safety Plan and the City Plan, both available on the website. I've also put some copies on the table there, so if you are interested in having a flick through, then that gives you some ideas of the themes and objectives that are in those documents. A total of 150,000 is available, and for generally 12-month period. The program guidelines allow for 3 years of funding maximum, but that's very rare. Typically, the grants that are available in this round of funding will be for expenditure during the 14-15 financial year. Total of the allocation of council is 750,000 approximately. Applicants must be a not-for-profit organisation. Now, if you're an incorporated association or you're a registered charity, then it's fine. You need to provide supporting documentation for that, and that's a clear eligible organisation. If you're not and you've got not-for-profit status, you need to give us a call, chat through the evidence that might be required. Clearly, Wyndham ratepayers are funding the grants, so Wyndham residents are the primary beneficiaries of the grants awarded. There's a competitive assessment process, of course. There's more grants applied for than there is capacity to fund, so even some good projects may not get funded depending on the pool of applicants available. We don't look at applicants who are profiting from gaming machines or have debts to Wyndham City. We're also not looking to promote specific political or religious views. That's not to say that political or a lot of organisations that apply have roots in religious groups, and that's fine as long as the activities are for broad community benefit, not for the promotion of those views. We don't want to give commercial advantages to specific businesses, and we're looking for broad benefit to the community. Some groups might want to do a project that's going to be mainly a benefit to their members. If that group has open membership and it's inclusive, it's invited for the broader community, that could be fine. If it's more an exclusive, really just benefiting a particular group, then it wouldn't rate highly in that broad community benefit assessment. On the application form, there's actually also a section that looks at benefit to disadvantaged groups. And we all know that certain groups don't get as fair a go as the broader community, and you'll see there a list of different groups that you can talk about a particular program might be targeting, and where that is aligned with those groups and that priority of council to help those disadvantaged groups, then you'll have a chance to describe how your project could meet that. Outside of that, though, we really want the benefit to be available to everyone in Wyndham. Where there's a responsibility of another level of government, we just don't have the capacity to fund it. Councils, I think, typically have the greatest accessibility and the greatest knowledge of the needs of the community, and potentially the least resources in the levels of government to fund it. So where there is another level of government, hopefully we can talk to people amongst council and be able to direct you to where funding might be available, or where advocacy for your project might be available, but it just won't be through a grant. Retrospective funding, projects that have already commenced are not eligible. If the activities that are to be funded under the project in that financial year 2014-15, and it needs to be clear in the application when your activities start and finish and what particular expenses and the timelines of those expenses are being applied for. We don't look at capital works and we don't look at general equipment only for general equipment, unless it's part of a broader project. It's a necessary part of that and it's not the whole ask of funding. Mainly the reason for those two ones there is that both of them can rapidly increase the value of the project, and then there's questions around maintenance, insurance, ownership at the end of the project, and where is the benefit going in the long term. So typically we would encourage, particularly, capital works is just out altogether, but particularly around equipment, what other ways of procuring that equipment there could be. Again, harping back to the looking to be open and not exclusive, we're not looking to fund excursions and events targeted only at organisation members. I've got here some of the dates that are important for this round, and you might want to bear in mind. We've already opened the round, so that's available for you to go in and begin an application at any time. It closes then at 5 o'clock on the 23rd of December, and on the dot of 5 o'clock it closes automatically, so be well in advance of that. There's a competitive assessment process that then runs, and Council won't make a final decision on grants until next year towards May. There's a panel process to go through, and it does extend out a bit. So towards the end of this financial year, the outcomes will be announced, and it will be voted on at an ordinary meeting of Council. And we'll advise you of the outcomes as soon as Council has voted on it. And that'll be around 31st May. After that, we have a focus period there to look at reporting requirements, payment schedules and KPIs. We'll look to have a discussion with each successful applicant in that period and finalise those for a funding and service agreement. And the funding and service agreement covers the period from the financial year, 1st of July 2014 to 30th of June 2015. It contains all of those reporting requirements and what activities will be in that period. So it's really important for us to have that conversation, get that all right, clarify anything in the application form to be able to, everybody to be clear on what will be provided and when. And of course, unsuccessful applicants will be provided any feedback and the reasons that they weren't successful. So in this section, I'm going to go through some of the parts of the application form. I'll just go into this on the web here. And you can see here on Smarty Grants, some of you, anyone used Smarty Grants before? Yep, been involved, yep, and that sort of thing. So you'll be familiar with it. I've got this round here. I'm just going to preview the form. We've tried to provide a little bit of information here. Some of it's just standard to Smarty Grants, but along the way, bits of information to help you in terms of doing project plans, developing budget, all those sorts of things, which will always add a lot of strength in terms of not only what you're going to do, but how you're going to plan it, how you're going to deliver it, whether there's any risks that you haven't thought of, all those sorts of things. Firstly, I'll just have a look at 4.2, and it's your opportunity to outline the activities you're going to do. So 4.2, not focusing so much on the benefits and objectives and outcomes, all those sorts of things, more focusing on when, where, how, who you're going to target, all those sorts of things, the actual activities. And then going further down, you'll be able to detail all the benefits, who's going to benefit the most, what are the objectives of the program, and go into more of the strategic alignment, all those sorts of things. Let's go over to section 5. The community benefit is clearly the key outcome. So we've got this section here asking a few targeted questions to allow you to articulate that. How you can support your the need that you've identified. What's the basis for the intervention or project, the activity that's going to address that need. If you've got supporting statistics, newspaper articles, research papers, all those sorts of things, if it's relevant, then by all means they can be included. They'll add support to the project. And just include the background and any calculations you've made so that it becomes clear and what the specific relevant data is and how it's being calculated. Let's go through to the budget section. Here you actually be able to download a budget template and populate that, attach it up into these boxes here. We're just really looking for the budget that you would have already calculated for your project. It doesn't need to be extremely detailed, but a level of breakdown we can see what are we buying, what are you looking at for funding, what staff, all those different types of expenditure. And also, if you've got it available, the project budget or the budget for your organisation, which helps us give a bit of clarity about what your core business is, what you're adding onto it, what are how that's going to align and interact. So objectives and key performance indicators. I'm sure you've all done these once before. We're looking for SMART objective or SMART indicators: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. If you're able to outline the objectives you're looking for, then a measure that will demonstrate success in that, and those objectives are aligned with the strategies of council and they're meeting a clear need. That's all of the nuts and bolts of a really well-supported application. So getting this last I guess main component of the application together is really a matter of what are the key goals, how are you going to measure it, how are you going to collect that data, and those 3 steps will put together your KPIs. And once you've got this information in here, and if you're a successful applicant, that information is just basis for discussion later, and in creating a funding and service agreement, how you're going to demonstrate what the benefits of the project are. So this section here is section 8, gives you a chance to look at the strategic plans in a bit more detail. So we've got the city plan, the health, wellbeing and safety plan, and there's a link here to those documents, so you don't have to print them out, you don't have to obtain a hard copy. You'll be able to find the sections in there that relate most to your project, and you can just clarify your understanding there of exactly what they're targeting. The alignment with these is, it's not necessary to have a whole big bunch of them. It's really probably more important that 1 or 2 are met really well than trying to tick all the boxes. The assessment panel is really going to be looking for those primary benefits and what area they're going into. So focus on a couple of them.
And that's where the population groups
Ah,
are in.
great. Yeah, so this one here is not actually a checkbox, it's a reference to this asterisk here, and it's got the population groups here that you may be targeting. Of course, you still need to explain why there's a need and why your project will meet that need. So we're now getting towards the tail end of it, and the the area here is in section 9 is around sustainability. Now, the issue, well, not necessarily an issue, but the goals of council here in the long run are for community organisations to be able to grow and sustain their growth and be able to get involved in activities that then, as they progress, access other resources from throughout the community. And hopefully our grant isn't just going to buy an activity or a project, but will launch something that can then develop. And we try and support that process through other areas as well, through volunteering, through identifying leaders and leadership programs. So trying to integrate that approach to community development leads us to grants and how we can support grantees to in turn develop and grow, not fully independent from council, in partnership with council, but not always requiring a government grant. So we ask that before you start the project, can you just consider how, in the long run, thinking down the track, the project is going to be sustainable. What we don't want to get into a situation is doing a lot of activity that gives a short-term benefit, but as soon as the funding stops, it all ends. And the long-term sustainability and viability is just not there. So there's a bit of narrative that you can put in here around your planning in that regard. Supporting documentation is pretty straightforward. There's a couple of things that you'll need to add. Certificate of incorporation, annual report. Whatever you have available, it doesn't mean that we want you to write a UBU glossy annual report for this application. It's whatever's available, and they can be attached here. So sometimes just stopping to think about what applications might provide more support. Letters of support from other organisations that you're going to involve in the project, or auspicious bodies, those sorts of things will be important to really demonstrate the support that's there. Okay, so let's shut that down. That's the declaration. That's where you'll finally submit section 12. If you've been following along, we've been through all these and you've got those there in your notes. So, okay. Successful applicants will be required to do some reporting. What we are aiming to do is get some robust key performance indicators in place in each funding agreement. We have that discussion with the successful applicants, and there's an understanding then of what's going to be provided throughout the year. Sometimes it's a starting report, mid-term report, end report, sometimes there's monthly reports. It just depends on whatever the activity and what suits the activity. But there needs to be that clarity in what sort of information council needs to be ensured that the funding is going to the right place, being well appropriated and all those sorts of things. And I think it's really also a benefit to the organisation as well that's applying. It gives them a chance to really consolidate and identify the benefits, and that strengthens reputation and the trust in the community as well. There's some compulsory fields, obviously, and I don't think I'll let you submit without filling those in. Complete all questions. Be aware of the eligibility criteria. Always happy to have a conversation about eligibility. It's the first hurdle to jump over, so there's no point doing an application if there's not an eligible project or organisation. That's the closing date. 150,000 is the maximum. The budget, we don't want too much detail, but it needs to be enough there to be able to see what different activities and what different expenditure items are actually being looked at. So make sure that's complete and realistic. We talked a bit about the KPIs being measurable, being realistic, smart targets. And don't forget to attach the supporting documentation. If you've got an organisation that's providing a contribution to the project, be it your own or another organisation, it does add a lot of support, and it really leads into that sustainability issue as well. If you've already identified some other funding sources, some other resources that you're able to access in the community, then it really leverages the benefit of council putting in money and the other organisation putting in money, and so that approach is ideal if that's possible.
What about in-kind funding resources?
Absolutely. So all those things that are considered in-kind support in terms of donations or in terms of volunteer labour,
So calculated at $20 an hour, basically for volunteer labour.
So previous slide saying give us a call if you have any questions. The closing date is a Monday, so if you're wanting to get in touch and talk about the application, the week before would be ideal. On the Monday we may be difficult to catch depending on how many interested parties we've got. The team here, as you can see, there's Diane, Sharon, myself there. We've also got a community grants analyst who's temporarily in that role, and that's Rachel. She'll can help out with the administrative side of Smarty grants, all those sorts of things. And we two are the key contacts there and can certainly refer any more complex issues onto to other discussions with Diane, Sharon or our manager, etc.